The one thing that never changes is the fact that everything changes. If you know where that quote came from, please let me know. I'm drawing a blank right now. But I believe people live most of their days with the assumptions of what should happen, with preconceived ideas based on their past experiences. And I think that can get you in a lot of trouble. Even friends, family, if you expect things from people based on what they've done or how they acted in the past, there's so many things that can influence how they treat you and how they react to the same thing day by day. So it's really a concept that is hard to grasp in the moment. So I think it's very important, consuming content and reading about it, because the more you do that, the more you can implement that in your life. So what I mean by that is just that quote alone has so much wisdom behind it. So next time you're unhappy over how someone treats you, or your friend canceling plans, or your family not being receptive to your life decisions, it really doesn't matter. It has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with everything changing, the environment, the stresses, getting enough sleep, how, just in general, did they eat well? Did Subway run out of spinach that day so their sandwich wasn't good? It can be so simple and mundane, and none of it most likely involves you. And that, I'm pretty confident in saying that. So one thing that kind of this segues into is living more presently. So if you live present and in the now, then it doesn't matter when things change. You simply look at it for what it is. It's just a law of nature. It's a law of the universe. It's just a law that you are no different. You're not separated from. I'm not separated from. Nobody is. You and me most likely react differently to people too, based on how our day is going, based on how much sleep we got. You got a bad grade on a test 2 days ago and you thought about it, and then 10 seconds later you run into a friend you haven't seen in 10 years. Do you think you're going to react the same way as if everything was going perfect, you had your caffeinated beverage, and you're in a great mood? Do you think you're going to react the same way towards that long-lost friend than if your day wasn't going great? And I'm going to say probably not. Some people can. I believe that. Those people are very in touch with living in the now, seeing things as they are and not worse than they are, not better than they are. It goes both ways. The goal is not to have peaks and valleys in life, I believe, in what I've heard. The goal is to have kind of just a steady presence. Now, what does a steady presence mean to you? And what does it mean to me? Just a certain calmness, a certain steady persistence of faith. One thing that can reinforce this or help practice this is actually the practice of meditation. the practice of self-study, you know. And I'm not an advocate for a specific type of meditation, because I believe a lot of it helps in the same way. You know, it might go about it at different angles, but meditation doesn't have to be sitting cross-legged, you know, going it's not necessarily about that. You can meditate walking to get the newspaper in the morning. You can meditate right before bed. All you have to do is remind yourself that you're just this small part of a bigger picture. You know, and maybe this bigger picture, the universe, is working with you. You know, if you're sending out the right messages, it's on your side. Or, you know, maybe you feel like things aren't happening as they should for you, but either way, it just is. And the more you can internalize that, the simplicity, the better off, I believe, life can be consistently. Because it really is simple. And myself personally, I have to remind myself, like, hey, yeah, you didn't get a lot of sleep. Yeah, you should have studied more on that test. But maybe, you know, you didn't have time, or that's the excuse you're using that day, you know? Life is sacrifices. Life is giving up things, but it's also beautiful in that you're rewarded for those efforts. So if you can keep things in perspective and live in the now, and the now is your normal, you know, because that's all we have. There's no past that we can reach out to. It's all memories. And even the memories are shaped by external events in your environment. The more you remember things, a lot of times, every time you remember things, there's things that can change. Little, you know, it's not necessarily reflective of what actually happened. And there's studies done on this, you know. So yeah, you can't reach out and touch the past. You can't know what's going to happen in the future. It's just as not here. The only thing you have is every breath you take. It's what you're deciding about how you're going to live right now. So you can make a conscious effort to just be open to the experience of whatever's happening. And those experiences are not great and fantastic, and they're not bad and terrible. They just are. And you can have your underlying beliefs. If you like sunny days, like, man, it's a nice day, I feel good, and that's perfectly okay. And that's actually awesome, enjoying the little things. And I think being in the now helps you do that. If you look at that tree, or you can't see the tree, but there's a tree right here, for example, and you look at that tree and you're like, that's just a tree. You know, there's 1,000 trees around me. There's nothing special about it. But if you're really present, you pick up on the little details that might make that tree beautiful, you know. And I'm not trying to sound like some, you know, whatever, tree hugger, hippie. There's a lot of negative terms that gets thrown around, but I really don't think there's nothing wrong with that. Enjoying the little things is part of being in the now. How the leaves sway in the wind, the shadows that are cast on the ground. There's a Japanese word for that in poetry. The shadows cast between tree leaves. When you look up and you see it cast down on the ground, but the Japanese language is all about, I believe, artfully expressing concepts like living in the now, much better than English can a lot of times. You know, English has to talk around things. Japanese has a direct word for a lot of things. Like the beauty in nature. And that's awesome. English can describe it. And anyways, I'm going on a tangent of languages, but I think it connects to the main point. Don't be afraid of change, because change is what makes the world go round. Change is important, change is necessary, and it's gonna happen, and it's always gonna happen. There's nothing you can do about it. You can't control how anyone else reacts to the change in their life. And a lot of times, it's hard to control how the change happens in your life. So if you can, try not to judge people for that. And even harder, but even more important, I believe, is don't judge yourself for that. Everybody's human, and we have less than 100 years, most of us, to figure as many things as we can out, and life can seem pretty complex on that front. But if you remember, things can be simple. Part of that is the inward journey. Living in the now is so simple, yet so difficult a lot of times when there's so many external stimulus, especially now. You got your phone and Facebook and Instagram, and there's people that design these things to catch your attention and hold it there for as long as possible so they can feed you these advertisements. It's supercomputers that you're competing against. It's not fair. And now we're going to have AI, and we already have AI, and it's going to be even more powerful and take over more parts of your attention and life. And I was thinking the other day, we're already cyborgs. Not the sci-fi sense where we have fully functional robotic limbs that you can jump 2-story buildings. No, we're not there. But we offload so much of our attention and so much of our mental capacity, and we don't have to remember things. We don't have to have concrete memories. Not that they're concrete anyways. We just take a picture. We do the calculator. We don't have to know how the math works necessarily. And that's just two obvious examples, but we offload so much mental effort, mental capacity to our technology that we already are, in a sense, cyborgs, And I'd be interested to dive more into that topic later, maybe from a philosophical standpoint. But today is just about the world's changing faster probably than it ever has, and it's more important now than ever because in some ways it's harder now than ever to connect with these laws and these facts and just be present. If you can, it's hard, and doing these little practices will help remember or remind you. And you can do it anytime, whether you're walking to school, just be okay with that. You don't need anything else other than the necessities. Food. Enjoy your food. That's being in the now. Sleep. You need sleep. But you also need to take the time and experience the little things. I love you guys. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.